The question no one expected Kody Brown to answer is the exact one he answered without even realizing it. Did he just expose the one secret Robyn has guarded like a state-level classified document for 14 straight years? Because with one careless little story, one moment he thought made him look like a devoted, overburdened father, Kody didn't just slip, he detonated the truth. And the fallout explains everything viewers have been sensing, but could never quite prove. Kody casually told the world about a day he tried to leave the house to visit one of his other wives. A perfectly normal moment in a plural marriage, right? Except little Ari wrapped herself around his leg, screaming, sobbing, refusing to let him go. And what did Robyn do? The woman who claims she champions the principles of shared marriage, unity, and fairness. She refused to intervene. She told him to just wait. And that detail, that split-second refusal, is the part Robyn would erase from history if she could. Because, in that moment, Kody unknowingly exposed the emotional architecture Robyn has constructed around him, the quiet system she put in place. The moment she entered this family, Ari's panic didn't come out of thin air. It was born in a home where Kody's presence isn't normal, it's precious, rare, something to be guarded, rationed, and yes, even weaponized. Kody thought he was telling a cute, fatherhood is hard moment. But no, he revealed that he stopped functioning as a plural husband the day Robyn walked through the door. He revealed why his older kids faded from his orbit while Robyn's household became his entire world. He revealed the kind of emotional environment Robyn carefully curated, one where a child's meltdown dictates a grown man's schedule, and where his sense of duty collapses under the weight of one household's demands. And the wildest part, Kody still believes this story makes him look sympathetic. He still doesn't realize this was the moment the mask slipped. So what exactly was the secret Robyn has tried to hide for more than a decade? And just how much damage did Kody do with this one confession? Let's unpack it, because the truth is louder than his excuses. Kody Brown rarely reveals unfiltered reality, but when he does, it drops with all the grace of a piano shoved off a third-floor balcony. His recent confession, the image of him trying to leave, while Ari clung to him like her world was ending, wasn't the tender fatherhood vignette he thought it was. It was an accidental spotlight on the family dynamics viewers have been witnessing unravel in slow motion for years. He claimed he begged Robyn to help calm Ari and she declined. She insisted Ari was just expressing herself and that Kody simply had to wait. He even admitted he had to remind her that he had other wives and other kids who needed him too. And as heartbreaking as that admission sounded, it was also chilling. Because the man who once preached about shared responsibility, unity, and balancing for households couldn't recognize that he hasn't lived any of those values in years. And his surprise at Ari's meltdown, that was the giveaway. That was the tell. Because her dependency didn't grow naturally, it blossomed in a household where Kody is the sun, the moon, and every planet in between. Where his absence is a crisis, and his presence is a luxury that must be defended at all costs. This moment also shattered the carefully polished image Robyn has pushed since 2010, the image of a woman who joined the family as a peaceful extra piece of the puzzle. She didn't come in as wife number 4 in practice. She came in as the gravitational center. And over time, she didn't just influence the family structure, she bent it entirely in her direction. Her famously failed jewelry business, pitched as her contribution, became yet another drain. Meanwhile, the original 3 wives kept working, kept sacrificing, kept carrying a household system that slowly transformed into a single household marriage, disguised as a plural one. Robyn loves to paint herself as the outsider, the victim, the misunderstood newcomer the other wives never embraced. And the irony, it's almost theatrical, because while she mourned her kids not being welcomed, she was busy constructing walls, emotional and physical, keeping her children insulated, elevating them above the rest, and defining every interaction like a resource to be rationed. She cried about older siblings forgetting birthdays, while conveniently forgetting the year she and Kody completely skipped Gabe's birthday, choosing instead to call him only so. Kody could ramble about his own minor ailments. No birthday message, no fatherly love, just Kody being Kody. The pandemic only magnified the favoritism everyone already knew existed. Kody claimed tight rules and strict boundaries, but somehow those rules only cut off communication with one side of the family, the side that didn't live with Robyn. The children he claimed to be protecting were the exact ones he barely acknowledged. His excuses about them not needing him anymore were nothing more than resentment wrapped in pseudo-wisdom, and the story he tried to spin with Robyn, the one about being a devoted father struggling with a sensitive child, it backfired instantly. It confirmed the truth. He hardly ever left Robyn's house. Ari's meltdown wasn't surprising, it was the predictable outcome of a child taught that her emotional collapse could dictate her father's movements. This isn't just unhealthy, it's manipulation under the mask of parenting. It gives a child control she should never have while depriving her of the emotional tools she should be learning. And Robyn's fury at Kody for telling this story makes sense. Because it exposed a truth she's been airbrushing out of the narrative for 14 years. And the pattern goes deeper. When Janelle's mother died, a devastating moment for any family, Ra's supposed need for Kody became an equal priority. The household responded to his return from quarantine with melodramatic theatrics, reinforcing the culture of dependency that Robyn has nurtured like a prized garden. This is the same household that rationed food during visits. The same household that orchestrated the massive Flagstaff move that financially drained the family while conveniently benefiting one home far more than the others. The same household where Kody's presence and resources mysteriously concentrated. Financially, the consolidation is staggering. Years of collective labor and shared investment funneled toward one couple. Coyote Pass might have all their names on paper, but the distribution of labor, money, and benefit tells a very different story. If the original wives ever take legal action, the footage alone could be a documentary. Kody's endless excuses, too tired, too stressed, too weighed down by a crying child to visit other wives, exposed the shift that happened the moment Robyn entered the picture. Janelle even had to remind him he could rest in her home too. The fact she needed to say it speaks volumes. But ultimately, the most revealing part of Kody's confession wasn't the image of Ari clinging to his leg. It was the fact that Kody truly believed this story made him look good, that he thought it vindicated him. In defending himself, he confirmed his absence. In defending Robyn, he revealed her strategy. And in claiming he was stretched thin among multiple households, he proved how thoroughly he stopped trying. A reckoning is coming. Maybe not today, maybe not this season, but eventually. And by then, the other mommy and kids he once referenced so earnestly may no longer be waiting at all. And that brings us to Kody's newest revelation, the one about loyalty. He recently bragged about being grateful for his 8-year-old daughter's loyalty after his divorce. And honestly, it's staggering, because only someone deeply committed to their own mythology could look at a child mirroring his bitterness and interpret it as devotion. It's not loyalty, it's emotional contamination. It's a child absorbing adult conflict because the adults in her life refuse to shield her from it. Kody calls it loyalty. The rest of us recognize it for what it is. A man demanding validation from a child because he stopped earning it from the adults in his life. The bigger, more unsettling question isn't what Ari knows. It's why a child this young has a fully formed emotional script about Christine's departure. She wasn't old enough to understand the nuance, the history, the fractures, unless someone handed her the narrative, pre-packaged, pre-spun, and perfectly aligned with the adults who benefit from her repeating it. The family could have offered a simple, neutral explanation. They could have said, sometimes grown-ups make changes, and left it there. But clearly, the storyline Ari knows runs much deeper, and it runs in one direction. Straight from the mouths of the adults who expect her loyalty. Kody, constantly casting himself as the wronged one, eats up her mimicry as though it were proof of devotion. Victimhood isn't just his fallback strategy. For Kody, it has become a personality type, a worldview, a shield he clings to even when it contradicts reality. And while he publicly insists children shouldn't be exposed to adult conflict, that facade collapses instantly when those same children suddenly voice opinions far too sophisticated and far too pointed for their age. Kids don't just wake up one day declaring that they hate Christine, or urging her to go date someone else. That kind of language doesn't emerge from innocence. It emerges from coaching. The so-called boundary between adult matters and children's. Awareness only exists when it helps Kody and Robyn hide behind it. The irony is almost cartoonish. These kids are apparently too sheltered to form meaningful bonds with their own siblings. Yet they're somehow highly educated on who left whom, who deserves blame, and who they're supposed to dismiss or resent. The double standard exposes far more about the parents than the children. And honestly, it's no surprise that many of the adult kids have chosen distance. They're not withdrawing from the family, they're protecting their own. Kody's claim that Ari's reaction reflects the same loyalty shared by others only worsens the absurdity. In his mind, devotion is measured by how precisely someone parrots his grievances. Or, even stranger, he imagines that other kids oppose him out of some blind loyalty to their mothers, as though these children are chess pieces in a war he invented. Neither interpretation is emotionally mature. Kody's approach to family dynamics feels less like fatherhood and more like high school clique politics alliances, whispered resentments, petty loyalty tests, and dramatic fallout. This is exactly why he keeps telling the same story of alienation. Any older child who refuses to indulge his self-pity instantly becomes an enemy. A traitor who gives him permission to retreat into martyrdom once again. The pattern is predictable, exhausting, and deeply harmful. And Robyn's role in cultivating this environment cannot be ignored. When she casually announces on camera that certain siblings don't want to see each other for the holidays, the audience can't help but wonder, if this is what she's willing to say publicly, what gets said behind closed doors? Children absorb everything: tone, tension, bias, grudges, and they grow into the worldview modeled for them. In that household, victimhood isn't just a theme, it's a curriculum, the result. A home where loyalty is extracted, not earned. Where narratives are crafted to serve adult ego. Where the youngest children become emotional shields, props, and tools, and the parents present it all with shocking pride. And this brings us to a truth people hate admitting: Robyn Brown didn't join a plural family, she orchestrated a silent takeover. Her worldview runs on a painfully simple operating system: whatever she feels is sacred, and whatever anyone else feels is a threat. Her defense of Aries' meltdown, framed as her daughter's noble right to express herself, was delivered with tender empathy, but that empathy magically vanishes when older kids experience real, legitimate emotional pain after spending years watching their father disappear into another household. Their emotions were not the kind she believed deserved validation. Their hurt didn't fit the narrative she was crafting. Robyn entered the family as wife number 4 in name only. Functionally, she acted as the new matriarch. She expected her needs to outrank those of the original 13 children. Any deviation from her fantasy of centrality was treated as a personal insult. Even polite neutrality offended her. When teenage faces failed to plaster on wide-eyed joy at the announcement of yet another baby, a baby that guaranteed even less time with their father and fewer shared resources, she viewed their quiet discomfort as a moral failure worth criticizing. Her competitive streak was not limited to emotions. She openly bristled when Gabriel dared to say he'd be spending Thanksgiving with Christine. A perfectly normal choice in a plural family became a betrayal in Robyn's eyes, and the punishment was swift and covert. He was quietly excluded from Christmas under the sanitized label of being unsafe, a word that conveniently doubled as a loyalty test. And the contradictions don't stop. Robyn disappeared for 3 full weeks to attend the birth of Meckelty's twins, a choice no one condemned. Yet the idea of Kody being absent from Ari for even a couple of days, suddenly catastrophic, suddenly traumatic, suddenly impossible. Apparently, Kody cannot leave the children who have a nanny raising them, but he can attend a friend's wedding, so long as no other wife is present who might remind the world they were once a plural family. Even Ariella's distress, genuine, understandable, age-appropriate, became another vessel for Robyn's selective empathy. Any other wife would have gently taught their child how to navigate the normal emotional fluctuations of plural family life. Christine, Janelle, and Mary all did exactly that for years. But Robyn insists her experience is unprecedented, her suffering unparalleled, her pedestal deserved. The resulting picture is not one of a noble mother or beleaguered wife, but of a woman who views plural marriage as a hierarchy she was meant to dominate, demanding loyalty, enforcing distance, and rewriting the rules to fit her comfort. And the tragedy: it's not that she doesn't see her hypocrisy, it's that she expects every single member of the family to pretend it doesn't exist. And this season, the cracks are finally showing, especially thanks to Janelle. Her recent honesty deserves applause because it finally punctures the myth that Robyn's home was a sanctuary of generosity and warmth. The revelation that Janelle's kids were scolded for simply approaching the refrigerator, complete with the now infamous sign, obliterates the idea that her household was welcoming. In truth, the hospitality stopped exactly where the grocery budget began. What makes this honesty even more striking is how restrained Janelle has always been. For years, she played the diplomat, the steady one, the partner most equipped to keep peace, as Christine and Mary struggled openly. Even when Christine criticized Kody and Robyn, Janelle stayed measured, hopeful that maybe, things could improve. But that restraint is gone now. This season, she isn't decorating her words with politeness or padding her sentences with diplomacy. She's calling out everything viewers have suspected for years: the refrigerator policing, the selective compassion, the glaring double standards, and the poor parenting hiding behind a curated facade. And with the wives finally released from the contractual obligation to keep quiet, the truth is pouring out. It feels like hitting the jackpot after years of reading between the lines. Robyn loved to claim her home was safe and welcoming, but now the irony is impossible to ignore. Her children were never denied food in the other households. In fact, judging from certain well-documented buffet behaviors, they seemed more than comfortable eating elsewhere. Yet her own kitchen operated under rules, restrictions, scarcity, and scolding. A perfect metaphor for the entire marriage. Asterisk. The heart of the problem, the piece everyone tiptoed around for far too long, is Robyn's absolute disconnect from the financial reality of living inside a shared household. She has always floated through the logistics of resource sharing, as though grocery money simply materializes out of thin air, as if the family pot is some magical self-replenishing fountain designed solely to meet her needs. But a family pot only works if everyone puts something in. You cannot keep withdrawing from a fund you never help fill. Somehow, this concept, one that every other wife understood instinctively, never seemed to land with her. Or perhaps she understood it perfectly, and simply chose not to care. And yet, even as Janelle finally begins naming the truth out loud, there's this aching frustration beneath the relief. Because these conversations, these clarifications, these calls for fairness and accountability, they should have taken place years ago on camera, in real time, while the damage was still unfolding. Janelle's kids deserved someone loudly advocating for them when the inequities were happening right in front of their faces. Not years later, when the fallout had calcified into resentment. She should have challenged Kody and Robyn's financial favoritism the moment it became obvious. Not after the wreckage became permanent. But honesty, even late, even delayed by heartbreak and conditioning, is still better than the suffocating silence she lived under for so long. And to her credit, this new version of Janelle feels different. Stronger, tired of smoothing things over, tired of being the polite buffer between Kody's chaos and everyone else's emotional well-being. It's a shift from quiet diplomacy to uncomfortable truth-telling, even if it shows up taped to a refrigerator door. A tiny act of rebellion, but a powerful one. And all of this brings us straight to the moment that exposed Kody and Robyn more clearly than anything else ever could. The nanny, yes. The nanny, the single most unintentionally revealing player in this entire saga. Because somehow, during the height of their so-called extreme caution, when Kody was refusing to see his own children in the name of safety, a non-family employee was invited into the home with open arms. Their rules were supposedly so strict that birthdays, holidays, and basic parent-child bonding were forbidden. But a nanny? A nanny was apparently essential. At the time, the two youngest kids were 10 and 5. Only one was young enough to need hands-on supervision, and the house was overflowing with adults who were home all day, unemployed adult kids, teens old enough to help, and multiple parents. Yet despite this human surplus, a nanny became non-negotiable. That alone shatters the entire narrative they tried so desperately to sell. Nothing about this situation screamed medical caution. Everything about it screamed selective convenience. Fans created theories trying to rationalize it, the most generous being that maybe she was a special needs tutor and the word nanny was just softer PR packaging. It's a nice story, but it collapses instantly the moment you look at the family's own behavior. Virtual learning was available. Kody pushed Brianna into online school specifically to keep her home. Yet somehow, that same courtesy never extended to Christine's girls like Isabel or Gwendolyn. Once again, selective rules, selective priorities, selective compassion. If their pandemic precautions were truly apocalyptic level serious, then the first person removed from the household should have been an outsider tutor, nanny, anyone not biologically tied to them. But instead, the nanny stayed while entire branches of Kody's own family were cut off completely. Marriages, father-child relationships, emotional stability, all sacrificed in the name of safety. But help with childcare, that, apparently, was worth the risk. And then came Christine's iconic question, the one that cut straight through the performance. What does the nanny do? It wasn't just a sarcastic jab, it was a diagnosis. A spotlight on the hypocrisy Kody and Robyn were praying no one would name out loud. And of course, they bristled. Nothing enrages a manipulator more than being confronted with their own contradictions. Christine refused to look away, and they've never forgiven her for it. But the hypocrisy didn't stop there, because right alongside the nanny issue was another deeply uncomfortable truth. The engineered affection between Kody and Robyn's children. Robyn's most powerful weapon has never been her tears or the perfectly timed breakdowns that seem to cue themselves right as accountability approaches. Her real influence comes from the years-long conditioning, yes, conditioning that presented her children as the most adoring, loyal, physically affectionate offspring Kody has. It was subtle at first, almost easy to miss. But once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Back in season 8, when an anthropologist visited, Aurora, already well into her preteen years, casually curled up in Kody's lap. Nothing inappropriate, but undeniably startling, especially because none of the original 13 Brown kids behaved like that at that age. Robyn's kids seemed trained to display a very specific kind of closeness, almost like they were rehearsing a script where devotion equals survival. Kids who barely knew Kody were suddenly clinging to him, begging for adoption, melting down in dramatic emotional displays, and in recent years, physically wrapping themselves around him to keep him from leaving the room. And to the untrained eye, it might look like genuine attachment, but to anyone paying attention, it looked choreographed, curated, designed. The message was unmistakable. These are the children who love Kody the right way. Imagine being one of the OG kids watching step-siblings drape themselves over your father like extras in a tragic Victorian play while you, a biological child, get scolded for not being enthusiastic enough. It wasn't inappropriate, just unsettling, overacted, and painfully effective. Because this tactic drove an early wedge between Kody and his first 13 kids. It didn't create his favoritism, he always had that inside him. But it turbocharged it. Kody has always adored very young children. Isabel, for example, was affectionate with him when she was little. There's a scene where he reminisces about how she was sweet to him and even to Mary, but not to Christine. Notice the pattern. He loves the version of children who idolize him unquestioningly, but the moment they grow up enough to form their own opinions, his interest evaporates. If he isn't being worshipped, he isn't invested. And that's exactly what made Robyn's kids so useful to him. Their displays of loyalty fed his ego, validated his sense of superiority, and let him pretend that love is measured by how tightly a child clings to his leg. Other kids in the family sought comfort in different adults. Mary often had little ones curled beside her despite the widespread narrative that none of the kids liked her. But those moments never came with the dramatic flair or emotional spectacle that Robyn's children's scenes carried. Even Janelle pointed out in recent episodes that Kody let Robyn's kids' clinginess disrupt the carefully structured rotation schedule, a quiet admission that these theatrics didn't just influence emotions, they influenced logistics. They changed the entire family rhythm. And then came the symbolism. The kind that doesn't need a monologue because the picture says everything. Robyn's carefully curated portrait that erased Christine's children and replaced them with her own wasn't just tacky, it was intentional. Mary didn't have enough kids to challenge it. Janelle wouldn't tolerate it. But Christine, she was the easy target. And this pattern goes back to the very beginning. Season 1, before the wedding, Robyn coached little Brianna during a conversation about photos. Brianna correctly called Kody by his name. Robyn immediately corrected her. "No, who is he, Daddy?" Brianna repeated dutifully. This was before they were even legally or spiritually unified, and while Brianna's biological father was still fully in her life. Encouraging closeness is one thing, rewriting a child's lived reality is another. So that infamous drawing of Kody surrounded exclusively by Robyn's children, it feels inevitable now. A piece of the larger project, rewriting history, reshaping dynamics, retelling the Brown family story until the original version feels like a rumor. The tragedy of the Brown family isn't just that it fell apart, it's that some of the fractures were carved intentionally. And Kody Brown, the so-called patriarch, was often holding the chisel. Asterisk. What an astonishing feat of self-sabotage this man has mastered. Imagine standing on national television and proclaiming with smug certainty that your first wife, the woman who helped build your entire life and raised one of your children, simply needed to go away. And then, with breathtaking confusion, wondering why those same children no longer want to sit at your feet like adoring disciples. The disconnect is almost artful in its absurdity. And through it all, there's one person who never flinches, never questions, never seems disturbed by the trail of emotional carnage. He leaves behind Robyn, the lone woman who watches him torch every relationship he's ever had, yet behaves as though the fire could never spread to her. She should be careful. History has a way of repeating itself in this family, and his favoritism ages about as gracefully as that hairline he keeps. Pretending isn't fleeing the scene, because not a single redeeming thought escapes his mouth anymore. Not one. What we're witnessing is a father minimizing and mocking the mother of his child for entertainment. A man tearing down the women who held this family together, as if dismantling their dignity will magically repair his own. For any child watching, that's not just uncomfortable, that's devastating. And for any spouse witnessing her partner belittle every other wife while whispering you're the favorite. There's no comfort in that. Favoritism only exists when multiple contenders remain. When the competition is gone, the illusion falls apart. The kids know it. You can see it in their expressions: tight jaws, narrowed eyes, forced smiles. They've watched their mothers be dismissed, diminished, rewritten as burdens instead of partners. And the message they've absorbed is chillingly clear. He wants their mothers out of the way, but he's happy to keep the financial benefits intact. Thanks for the contribution. Now kindly exit the storyline. His resentment toward Mary becomes most obvious whenever she dares to succeed independently. The moment she finds a foothold outside his control, a business, a purpose, a victory he can't claim as his own, he lashes out. Because independence, for him, is mutiny. Success he can't siphon from is betrayal. Control is the real currency in this household. Not love, not unity, not spirituality. And control is exactly what he clings to as he dictates who is allowed in his life, who must leave, and who must sit quietly in limbo waiting for his approval. When questioned, he retreats behind the flimsy shield of a religion he no longer even practices. He declares the marriages unbreakable for him, yet astonishingly breakable for everyone else. He refuses to release Mary formally because that would require accountability, explanation, honesty, and accountability terrifies him far more than embarrassing himself on national television ever could. His treatment of Mary isn't just insensitive, it's cruel. Telling the world he should never have married her, after sharing decades, milestones, heartbreaks, and children. That's not honesty. That's punishment disguised as revelation. And while he pretends he's simply being transparent, the children hear every word. The audience hears every word. The whole world witnesses him rewrite their shared history, while taking responsibility for none of it. He airs every grievance he's ever had with every wife except one. There is one thing he protects with fierce, almost comical loyalty: the fragile, over-processed curls he insists on crowning himself with, as if the hair alone will uphold the patriarch he failed to be. What we're watching is not confidence, it's insecurity, deep, aching insecurity masked with bombast favoritism, and the need to push down the people who once held him up. He believes he's selling the performance of a righteous leader, but the only person convinced by his act is the man in the mirror.